Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello, I'm Sue Rose Minahan, Talk Cosmos host. I'm here on Halloween. Samhain. I always have a tricky business, but it's a wonderful holiday that I cherish. And it's, October 31st here on our side of the globe. And I have with me part of my great Moonbeam team here as we go. Two wonderful people. We have Sara Stromley in her mascot shape. And we have Justin Elzie also joining us. And we will see Liz Muschett later. So today, what are we doing? We are, in a sense, synthesizing this idea of having left the retrograde season, which was pretty intense. Granted, Mercury does this 3 times a year, and it's all in air signs. It was in relationships, Libra. Everything's a relationship. We went down to the depths and up again to look ahead, changed in some regard, because you don't go down to come up for nothing. Something is going to shift. But ahead of us, we're entering this eclipse season. Coming up, because we're the not Moonbeam, but Moonbeam Team, we're looking at the Scorpio New Moon, which will be November 4th. In a couple of days, is entering that deep, again, plummeting time of rebirth, of our psychology, of our spirit, of what gives us power, to then the eclipse season, which again is like turn the energy off, see what you see, and go on again, which is going to be in Taurus. Very powerful. And what are we calling ourselves? Santa's Radical Rebirth. So now is time, and I'll just put this on. I can't talk with my mask, but maybe you can see it for the next little bit. My one entry for the holiday season is the Moonbeam Team.
Different forms of horary, location mapping, and medical astrology into my practice. I enjoy uncovering flower and mineral frequencies that also support the mind-body coherence that aid in the healing journey.
Hi again, there you are. So we also have Justin Crockett, Elzie, and he'll give a little feedback.
Yeah, I'm an archetypal astrologer, and I specialize in in-depth realization of charts, and I do a combination of Western and Vedic astrology, and work with the predictive astrology as well. So I do really in-depth analysis. I do research in astrology, really. So.
And Justin has also other capacities, which each of us have shared about ourselves, but he is a Reiki master and actually specializes in animal Reiki, and is a medium and has seances and of that experience too, along with numerology. He's been on several shows and is coming up. He'll be on featured December 12th. So check it out, because we're going to talk about the new nodes coming up and the imminent USA Pluto return. So here we are on Halloween. And
do we have Liz on?
I think we have Liz. I don't know what's happened to our wonderful Liz Muschett. We will try to figure that one out. But here we are. So, you know what? Always with, okay, I think how we thought about this was because Jupiter was in some ways like a Santa Claus. And Jupiter is very prominent right now. It's ruling our south node. And so that's part of this essence. And for radical change, you know, there's a powerful dynamic of how we're continuing to think about, maybe we could see a chart.
Actually, yeah, I don't think Jupiter is quite into Pisces yet, but we cover that a little bit more in the eclipse chart. So
sure. No, we're going to do the new moon.
Yeah.
The new moon chart, which is that the new moon chart?
Go back. There you go.
Yeah.
So this is coming
This is the new moon chart at 12 degrees Scorpio, and it's going to be November 4th, and that for Eastern time is 5 15. These classes aren't that great. I'm sorry, in the evening. So, at any rate. And so, just about the dynamics there. I think we had a little pre-chat just to open this thought up, but it's a change agent. It's changing the conversation through all of this and sort of the health of maybe not just here, but there's a certain part about our wounds and our hygeia with health. So if there's thoughts here that either of you have to share.
Well, there's some really dynamic Scorpio energy here. And I always like to think of Scorpio in these mid degrees as being just this really more of a wild card. It's just full of unflinching determination and strategy and almost an obsessive need for transformation, especially in the areas where in this chart where there's challenges by authority because it's square Saturn, and where we've been left feeling powerless.
Or wondering, that great entry. And I know Justin will have plenty of thoughts. Yeah, because really it is a matter of shedding those relationships, those deep exchanges that we've had to find out what is really going to empower us or what's the value.
Right. Well, I think the ingress of Mars from Libra into Scorpio is really what's driving this, and that moon's just right on top of that, So, I mean, whereas with that Mars in Libra, it's been about trying to move forward with balance and harmony and kind of reassessing and decision making. But now that Mars has moved into this really powerful, as Sue pointed out, tactical and obsessive, there's going to be things are going to speed up now, and people are going to be a lot more, how do you want to say, obsessed, or really
Fixated.
That's a great word.
Yeah.
Fixated on getting stuff done and doing it from a more tactical and strategic point of view.
Strategy. That's something that
we talked about. Joe Biden's Mars is in Scorpio, so he's having a Mars return.
Yes, and both of these charts, I had some by charts of that, but it was really dynamic because I think the new moon, which is when they're together and we don't see it because the moon's blocking the sun, is right on his Mars. So that's, and strategy, strategy is not something that really is a familiar word for this last year with all the unknown probabilities that we've been experiencing, because suddenly our world is always in coordination with the exterior world because of COVID. You couldn't go, you had certain requirements. So this is people want to strategize.
One thing I think that's very unique about today is, Day of the Dead. That's why I kind of dress this weird way. And
I love it.
I know, we're reminded where we are.
And it's a very Scorpio look to the skeleton.
Yeah.
There,
I'm Scorpio rising. Like
There you go. Awesome.
But there's with Scorpio, the veil is just thinner between the worlds, and there's a just an incredible skill that Scorpio has in sensing what can't be readily seen, and what lingers below the surface, and finding that treasure that remains uncovered. It can, it's Scorpio is represented by, like, in different cultures, different forms of astrology, the scorpion, the snake, the eagle, which can be representative of the different levels of functioning and the superior defense and skill with attack, and as well as an incredible capacity to heal. It has a power in holding and retaining secrets, and the ability to pull energy and resources and effectively engage when others are on the wake of an attack or in shock and frozen with fear. They just have an engagement skill with that. But its shadow is the inability to be vulnerable or a sense of overreaction. at times, and an obsession over slights, which can make them a bit formidable.
Well, there is always important the total spectrum, which includes when we see light, there's going to be shadow depending on what's obstructing it. And so that has, depending, all these variant possibilities. It's so true, whether it's for oneself, one's relationships, and whatnot, as far as the depth of that. And Scorpio does have great depth. It is a transformational sign, which is a wonderful feature, but it can be, as we've said, the scorpion itself, which has that tail that's going to bite, it's going to sting, it's going to kill. And then, of course, the couch potato that's like, I don't know, into the phoenix or the eagle or whatever we want to call it, the rising to the light, right? Very important. This Hygeia opposite Chiron.
Yeah,
I know, Justin, you brought that up into focus before, and I think that's such a, thinking about the healing possibilities.
Right. Well, so Hygeia, for those who may not know, is an asteroid it's named after the Greek goddess Hygeia, and that's how we get the word hygiene. So whatever sign it's in, it's about the health of that sign, and everybody has it in their chart. And it just so happens it's in Libra right now. So we've been dealing with this with the Sun and Mars and Mercury and Libra, this health of relationship, basically, but it's still there, and it's in opposition to that. Chiron is in Aries, which is really bringing forward to the front of being valued, our values. And so with it, the values of self versus the value of myself in a relationship. So we're still dealing with relationship stuff, in our society right now. And what it will probably come up in a lot is about people looking more towards relationships that value them, being with somebody that values them. And so there'll be a lot of relationship stuff comes up right now. Like, I'm in this relationship, but I'm not being valued. And so it's really about going back and revisiting. And that Scorpio, as Sue was talking about, is helping drive healing that and thinking with intention and strategy of maybe I need to make some changes here to transform.
I love it. Maybe, I know we talked about fixed stars and we talked about the Sabian symbols. And Justin, you do a lot with Sabians. Liz, I think, is having internet problems. Liz, we're with you in spirit.
Yeah.
So we shall, it's not easy. I'm sure. I think she did text something of that sort. She's out on Camano Island. And Justin actually came from the peninsula, and I came from Hawaii. Here we are at the studio in KKNW.
And Catherine, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Do you want me to tell you what the Sabian symbol is?
yes, let's do it.
So the Sabian symbol, the 26 degrees Libra of that Hygeia, is talking about the eagle and the large white dove change into each other. So it's about this interaction of spiritual will and love principle, and adeptness within our relationships. And then, of course, the 27 degrees talks about really this airplane that sails high through the sky. So basically transcending the conflicts in our relationships and looking at it from a higher perspective. And I think the Scorpio is really right there along with that, working with that and saying, okay, here's what you need to transform and so on and so forth.
It encapsulates. That's so fascinating. It really is that energy. It's amazing. Now, and that's okay. We were going to talk a little bit about the fixed star, and we could talk about, just depending on time, we're pretty flexible about the
Yeah, I did not want to bring up the one that I mentioned earlier because I don't think it's a close enough or strong enough aspect. So there's one that I was going to cover with the eclipse chart.
Yeah, do.
But one thing I wanted to cover on this chart that is really dynamic is that Uranus opposed the sun and moon.
Oh.
And that there's just this really intense dynamic that's just amplified with between the two signs, the polarities of Scorpio and Taurus. There's a shadow side to both of these that can play out where Taurus can just dig their heels in and be white-knuckled and is unwilling to let both of those signs
Well, it's a
just are
comfort
unwilling.
zone. It's a
Both of them
comfort
are
zone.
unwilling or unyielding. They're fixed signs. They're unyielding, willful, and they're always looking to the other one to drop their position, so to speak. So Taurus can be, digging in even more so when asked to, and then Scorpio is, can behave like a black hole super suction machine.
Black hole. I love that description.
And so, but the positive side of those is that, Taurus the highlight of Taurus is the kindness that can be brought to relationship that you were just displayed with Hygeia and Mercury in this chart that's in Libra. But, and Scorpio, has this incredible capacity to heal when it's
Right. If I may, and I appreciate very much returning.
Can I say
Oh, yeah,
something? Because I
please.
think she's touched on something that about, because that Taurus is the mother, the healer, the nurturer, and that Scorpio is I think you're right, working with that as to what has to transform. And I think it's definitely I think you're spot on when there's a healing aspect to that opposition there.
And I'm glad to bring up, yes, Uranus, because in Taurus, which is a 7-year cycle, 8-year long cycle, 6, 7, and we're still involved with for years to come, is always about values. And so paramount with Taurus is that values. And with Taurus, too, it's when you were saying about the kindness, it's true, it's a Venus, but it's more of a comfort. It can get stuck. It has this whole dynamic. They're opposite signs, they have access. And on
comfort zones.
Yeah, and it is that comfort zone because it's survival of resources and self-reliance. It's very strongly self-reliant, and you can get in a rut. Whereas Scorpio is saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, but this routine is not working. We need to break forth because I have new values. I'm a new energy of life support, and because it's always life. It's not death that they want. They want to think how to outwit death. They want to have life, and so yes, it's really." In order to do that, it can be manipulative. There's this negative side, but on the best energy of it is that transformational. And I'm so glad the healing, and thank you. That's good. There was a fixed star. It was a crux, which is part of. It's at 12 degrees Scorpio, and the sun is joining a crux, and that's part of the Southern Cross, and it also has a nature of Jupiter, which I thought was most interesting. And of course, Jupiter has all the good and the bad. Traditional things of it is always great, but it can be excess, of too much. But it does have that idea of some kind of spiritual, religious conceptions, and also interestingly, it would say occultist, which is change, right? It's what we're doing, looking at. It's always how to define those words.
I think, Sue, you brought that up about you're the fixed star person, and you brought that up. What that crux was on what degree?
I didn't.
Sarah, you mean?
Sarah,
It was pretty close to that sun moon, and I honestly didn't
Well,
look at it because I got pulled into more
It's
of the
11
eclipse
degrees,
stuff.
52
Oh,
degrees.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
so it's right on. Yeah. But if we were to look at, we have a little time here about the Sabian symbols of the new moon, that would be, we were going to do 3. If I remember, it was going to be the karmic, which is the degree it's in, 12. Then the actual Sabian, which rounds it off, which is 13. And then we were going to do the quest. I know Linda Hill does those, and I think on July 4th, Justin, when you had your wonderful talk about numerology and that, we did the 3 also. So it's sort of a fascinating idea to see where we come, what land are we in, what is in the previous, what's happening now, and where are we headed. So 12 degrees, I think, was something about an official embassy hall, like group consciousness.
Yeah, it's the Sabian symbol is an official embassy ball, and it really, the keynote of that is sort of this the group consciousness is going to a higher level, or trying to, and being displayed out for all. And then, of course, the 13 degrees is an inventor performs a laboratory experiment. So again, it kind of it speaks to that, a lot of that Mars energy, a driving urge towards achievement, which is sort of the root of, every day everything's always changing.
And it's about going outside the boundaries of what's known.
Yep.
The
I like
active
that.
science of observing what happens
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
when
good.
this happens and when you do this and
Yep.
under these conditions. But this is just a lot of change energy, and on a personal level, this just feels very jolting, I would think.
It's the time of the year. Yeah. It's like, hey, it's time to realize we've harvested. Now it's a matter of figuring out, it's the darkest time of year. These old holidays, I say holidays, ceremonial holy days that were like at the most fixed point of the fixed signs, because the light was different. It all has an energetic appeal. So here was the darkest day of the year. And so really it's a matter of saying, what are my roots doing, and what are they growing in? There is that idea. Of course, down in the southern hemisphere, it's different. But back just a little bit about the 13 Scorpio, from the Sabian symbols, about that inventor, that imagery that they were saying in the laboratory experiment that Justin was mentioning, according to Dane Rudjar, which I know both I learned from Justin and also from Liz, and I have this wonderful book that he had, The Mandala. But it's the ability to relate seemingly unrelated facts, which is really what you were saying. I was just, looking at the resources
Right.
and the unknown that you're bringing up, Sarah.
That's Scorpio.
The whole time we're talking about this, I can't help but correlate this to just how there's this record number of people leaving their jobs, just quitting
Yep.
all
Yep.
over the place. And there was some survey, I don't have the source of this, and I don't know. I just thought it was worth repeating. But there was a survey done that said that 95% of people think of quitting their job every single day right now. And it could be just because,
Wow.
the
Wow.
few that are left
Yeah.
behind are taking on all that extra load of everyone else. And the energy, they may have been in a certain place for so long and been recognizing
Right.
these questions of value
Right.
Yeah.
and worth
Right.
and all this.
We can get rid of the chart maybe now and have our little gorgeous faces showing more, if you'd like. Yeah, thanks. Good. That's an interest. We're here. It's so different. You have to adjust. Talk about personal adjustments. We've been working online, and I noticed that having come to Seattle and actually talking to the person I'm staying with here, it's like I actually know how to talk to a person, and look at them in the eye, whereas I was looking off into the world. So,
And I want to point out something that's important to what Sarah said about the, where you can see the real world of how astrology is affecting us in our daily lives. And you mentioned all those people leaving their jobs. And I see that a lot in that Sun-Uranus opposition. Uranus and Taurus is talking about resources and money and job and how am I getting paid, right? The 2nd to 8th house there. And that Sun being that person's personality, and Scorpio saying, wait, maybe I need to use that Uranus to change how I'm getting paid, how I'm getting nurtured right now. So that, I think that really highlights that what's kind of going on in the collective that you were talking about.
Yeah, I saw an ad on that Amazon was placing for just trying to pivot with the personality shifts that are happening right now. And they were advertising, I like to work between these hours and these hours, and I like to, this is what I'm trying to fit into my life. So they said, and we're hiring, and, this is the job that they have is just, employers saying, okay, yeah, just when are you available? When is it good for you? And just kind of being a little more adaptable to
Yeah, it's actually a really
adding more-
empowering time for
adding more
people.
benefits.
There's always
and adding
opportunity.
more in-
We are going to return in a few moments, and we've been covering here wonderfully with Sara Stromley and Justin Crockett Elzie on Moonbeam Team for Talk Cosmos on Halloween, July 31st, about this new moon in Scorpio at 12 degrees, getting close to the middle of the sign. That's going to be on November 4th. And it is just to encapsulate so much energy about this transformational process, opening up those, how are we going to comprehend more? How are we negotiating and our routine jobs? Great illustration. So thank you. We'll be right back. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Scorpio, traditionally ruled by Mars, now ruled by Pluto. By departing a cycle based on comparison between extreme energies finding balance, Scorpio commits a relationship to exchange resources, experiencing power and powerlessness for the purpose of soul growth transformation. As a fixed water sign that is extreme, intense, and secretively deep, Scorpio's passionate nature questions the psychology and mystery concerning life and death.
Old world travelers never began a journey without a compass. And today, smart travelers won't leave home without a map or GPS to navigate the journey ahead. But when it comes to your journey through life, how do you get your guidance? By aligning numerology and astrology's wisdom. Combining numerology with astrology offers a great spectrum of insightful meaning for your personal yearly, monthly, and daily numbers. And to help you navigate these numbers to discover your best daily route, numerologist Liz Muschett, along with Gloria Riley, an Egyptian numerologist, and intuitive consultant Jenny L. Sinclair have co-authored the book Gateways to Change 2018 and Beyond. Keys to navigating the seas of life using numerology and astrology. In addition to the book, Liz is also hosting a Gateways to Change workshop this fall, which complements the book to guide you to your life's journey and explore how to use the resources offered in the book. Copies of the Gateways to Change are included in the registration fee. The Gateways to Change book is now available to order on Amazon, and to register for the workshop, you can contact Liz at her website, alightpath.com, or send her an email at Liz, L-I-Z, Muschett, M-U-S-C-H-E-T-T @gmail.com. Let Liz be your compass as you continue your journey here on Earth.
Talk Cosmos brings you leading-edge astrological conversations with hour-long programs each week on KKNW. The show goes live every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on Facebook and YouTube, along with daily chats throughout the week on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you click like and subscribe buttons so you can get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or, if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. So, grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Hello, this is Sam Reynolds from AlocAstrology.com, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk, 1150 AM, where leading-edge astrology conversations empower your soul's growth. Hosted by Sue Rose Minahan every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time.
Alternative Talk 1150, local talk for the body, mind, and soul.
Hey, I like that. Body, mind, and soul. Thank you, 1150 KKNW. Ain't that the truth? Okay, this is all about our mind, body, and soul. It's Halloween. It's also, and Justin, tell me how to say that word. Sam.
It's a Samhain.
Samhain. You know, words and me and pronunciation is right from my beginning. Okay. And really, it was the darkest night, and it was the the eve, and the next day is All Saints Day. It's really, like Sara, you brought out, the veil is the thinnest, and it's when we have the approach, because the light is the least, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere.
I just love how Mexico really celebrates
Day of the Dead.
their ancestors and communicating with.
Yeah,
with
and it's
them.
other traditions too. I've learned it's not Mexico does, but it is like very many ancients, thought of this, which not at the tip of my tongue, but it's extended. It is so true. So we're going to talk about the powerful lunar. It's a full moon. That's a lunar eclipse, and it is going to be in Taurus. Even though the nodes, they're approaching the very beginning of their 1 degree Gemini. So, of course, it extends over the border, you might say, into Taurus. So this is it's a late degree Taurus, close to that cusp of Gemini. 27 degrees, 14 minutes of Taurus on November 19th. 2 weeks. It's always 2 weeks after the new moon, which we already discussed in Scorpio. And it's going to be in Eastern time, just because the Eastern is for the United States where the capital is and all this, and it sort of, if we're going to talk collectively, represents that. It'll be in the morning at 3:57 a.m., meaning that, yes, that's what it is. So it is an end of a cycle. We could say creating new traditions. I'm going to leave it open. Anybody have thoughts that you...
Let Sara go first here.
Okay, Sara.
Well, this one's really dynamic.
Woo, here we go.
Wow. There's just really tough conversations that need to be had at this time.
I kind of relate this to, like when we are doing charts, we look at prenatal eclipses, because that gives you the prelude towards that birth. Eclipses being cycles. And I think looking at this one, this eclipse is giving us a prelude towards the nodes moving into Taurus and Scorpio coming up. And what does that birth for this new year look like with this eclipse?
That's so great.
Absolutely.
Goes right along with our Santa's Radical Rebirth and little tidbits that we kind of got at. That's very powerful. So perhaps you want to, because these nodal change or more thought about our self-reliance and what is failing with those relationships versus now we're just communicating and rebuilding a structure of belief system.
You're right, and because Taurus and Scorpio rules the 2nd to 8th house, resources, how we get paid, and so we're dealing with really two dynamic things. When we were in the Sag and Gemini energy, it was more about individual and the collectivism, right, and philosophy and beliefs. Now we're moving into a period of time of materialism versus spirituality. What are we going to let go of? And so we're going to see more possibly a focus more on financial stuff coming up, and the markets and homes and the inflation because of this. But in our own individual lives, what is really valuable that we need to, back to what Sara was talking about, that nurturing Taurus and what we have to transform as far as what's valuable.
Nurturing.
What we need to let go of versus accumulate.
And how we need to restructure our lives to support that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Restructure.
Because everything is reporting up to Saturn at this point, and Uranus, it's co-ruling that. So
they're in that big energetic tug, aren't they?
Yeah.
Old, new, regrow or shatter. Yes.
Yeah, Venus has moved into Capricorn at this point. She's all about brass tacks, and there's conversations and dynamics around that. There's this very uncomfortable tension, this chiving between Taurus and Scorpio. Are you
Go ahead.
Okay.
Because a couple of code words, when you say moon and Mars, immediately I'm recognizing always that's a cut It's like the moon doesn't want to let go. The moon is receiving light, it's giving back, and it's nurturing, that beautiful word of nurturing.
And in Taurus, it wants to be generous and kind.
Well, it wants generous and kind somehow. I know
but
a lot
it wants
of Taurus.
what it wants.
I know. I have a lot. I know. No, Taurus is it's a loving. It wants balance. It wants status quo. I mean, it's security of it's working and it's thriving, and so it's not really there. It's a patient. I think it's a lot of patience, which can come into kindness, which of course, but it's patient. But I'm thinking with Mars. So thank you for elaborating on that. But with Mars, its whole energy is action, and it's going to cut away, and it's going to instigate and move. And so when it comes to the moon, regardless of signs, those two have there's some tension there naturally.
Well, my Mars is actually in Taurus. So
mine is too. Yes,
so,
I got you.
But I think so here you've got the Mars. It's saying that we need to make some changes. We need to get moving here. But that Moon emotionally is saying, I don't feel secure with that just yet. Let's just go a little bit slower here.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that tension there.
Yes, I understand 1,000% because Venus rules both of mine. Yes, my Moon and I have Mars Taurus too.
And Mercury and Mars together and in Scorpio just seems like it's just hard to have that filter on to understand that there's a human being on the other side that has feelings. So there can be just some insensitivity.
It's a complex chart, yes. Yeah. And because we've talked earlier, and we're always working to try to make it common sense, out of our language here. But really, astrologically, there's some dynamics here besides just that opposition, which is including all these other factors of the action with Mars and our thinking process and what nurtures us because of Ceres. But then I think Pluto has transforming is
it's enshrined to that moon too.
Yeah, it wants to work with it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really wants.
I don't know if it's really a good bed partner
it's
or not.
really pushing that moon in Taurus beyond its normal comfort zone, maybe with a little more ease.
It's like that storage unit that I came here for because the price tripled on me.
You're like, okay.
And I keep thinking, well, the best news would be I just get rid of everything. And then I go, oh, wait a minute. Am I ready to do that? I only have so much time. Yeah.
I want to point out, you mentioned, I think you're spot on with that, Sarah, with that Mars Mercury, and it's showing up in the chart in the first house. People are going to be, that's like seeing through the motives of everything. People are going to be really focused of where do I need to go next and what do I need to do here.
So maybe that'll really help with this idea that we came up with, because we are Santa Radical Rebirth, because Christmas is on its way and we're in this, with eclipse season, there's 2 weeks ahead, 2 weeks between, and a long time with the solar, who knows how long. When things change, the domino effect. But how are we creating new traditions? And is it the more activities? Is it outside the box, which we know? And again, it is a lot of this Uranus. I'm trying to find out where's Uranus?
Uranus.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
at 12 degrees. But at any rate, the new traditions. Like, take the nodes right now. We're in transportation with Mercury, with Gemini, and across the water, we've got all those boats outside, or ships as they're supposed to be called, I think, outside of Los Angeles. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it really encapsulates that idea. And the delay of Christmas, an ornament, and exchanged it, a paper ornament, because I found that in his papers. It was this little Christmas decoration, the value.
The reason that Christmas kind of jumped into our pre-talk for me was for a number of reasons, but that dynamic between Mercury and Jupiter and Neptune. So Mercury is about thinking, how we're processing and our stories. And it's trine Neptune, which is belief. It's, really activating that sense of belief. But it's square Jupiter, that capacity to receive, to have luck and to receive the finer things in life. And Jupiter's not in the best position at this time when it's all reporting to Saturn, which is about condensing and bringing it back, pulling it back a little.
And it's that's very good, because naturally speaking, Jupiter's ruling that south node of all our belief systems that Sagittarius represents. And in the south node, that represents what we're releasing also. It's like better values and concepts and everything. It's what it's all been about for 18 months as we pass the torch, you might say, soon to a new energetic sign.
Yeah, that 1 degree Sag is really, I agree. It's about thinking things in a different perspective. And, as to what Sara was talking, seeks to grow and expand through
the human experience.
Yeah.
So
this very large 1,200 year cycle, I think approximately, and it's called Saros, Saros, and they happen multiple times, going from the bottom of our globe at the South Pole to the north, or the north to the south, and they are both in the lunar signs and the solar signs. So it's a very complex and powerful backdrop cycle. And so for those people, but energetically, this happens to be number 126, and it's a lunar cycle. And it happened to have started back in the year 1228, on July 18th, to be exact. You can find all this on Google, not a problem. Events that happened during this 1200 or so years cycle. And we're pretty much in the middle. This happens to be 45 of 70. And so it's what they call a partial one. But we'll be able to see it, the pathway of this eclipse in the Americas. That's mostly North America, a little bit of Mexico. I don't think Florida gets to see it as well. After the Crusades, and I happen to know that there were a lot of stone, huge churches being built at that time. But interestingly, there was a cardinal in England who had helped with Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is one of these famous, documentaries that really had happened earlier, but this archbishop had been very instrumental, and it had back just a few years before, in 25, had revised it. And the importance of the Magna Carta is that our colonists, for our Constitution, used that for our Constitution, because it brought up the idea that people, well, they didn't say people, they said man, but mankind was had freedoms, and it was the rights. It was so many of our rights. And so really, when we talk about the new values in that, and trying to work with other people, and so I think somehow at that time in 1928, when this started, this same archbishop, whose name is Stephen Langdon, took the Bible and made it into chapters that we use. So there is some kind of legality involved with some really premise of our liberties and who we are that we're also looking at very closely too and we can't even maybe answer that at this point, but it was interesting.
Well, I think you pointed out something that, as we know with Pluto and that and Capricorn, it brings up breakdown of structure of institutions and government, but also revolutions, and brings power to the people, power to the masses. So you talk about the Magna Carta. They didn't want to sign that. They were forced to it because the power of the collective. And now, as Sara was pointing out, what we're seeing now is there's, when can we last remember that employees had this much power in the collective to enact change, and it's now that's what's driving this this increase in wages and better benefits. And so I think there's a little bit of that that Pluto and Capricorn affecting this, along with that Uranus and Taurus, that is giving this power to the collective here.
Yeah, I think back at The Jungle, that book by Saroyan. I think was it William Saroyan that wrote The Jungle? It's back in the 1920s, and it was about the horrible conditions, and that's what led to the unions, for the collective. Anyway, go ahead.
I really would like to point out that the fact that there's a fixed star algol that is
yes.
exactly conjunct this moon, and also it's just
important.
And algol is a 3-star system that's always eclipsing itself every little more than 2.5 days,
blinks.
Much like the moon. And when things are conjunct the moon like that, it makes it more real. So I don't know, the story is, it's very a foreboding thing for traditional astrology. For those that are more evolutionary like we are, we know that if you're born with this, we all have algol somewhere in our chart. But if it's touching a personal point, we've integrated that energy a little bit more. But it can be an indicator of really disastrous type events that can happen. Even almost violence that we could see in the news, and a consequential type thing. And there's another, because I wanted to mention an asteroid, Niobe, which is conjunct Jupiter at this time, where this eclipse is square Jupiter. It's one of those heavy hitting points.
Oh yes,
Niobe is one of the oldest and most consequential. Her myth is that of consequence. She moves quickly because she's an asteroid, so it's not always there. But Jupiter makes everything bigger. So
that's true.
So just caution if you think you're going to get revenge on somebody.
Not a good
Think
time.
again.
Think about that Scorpio
Pretend
energy.
it now on Halloween.
So even during this time. So yeah. But some really interesting myth on Medusa. I mean, her story is that of, she was raped by Neptune or Poseidon in Athena's temple, and thereby, she offended Athena for maybe doing this on the job, in her temple.
Right. Not much respect.
She's
Thank
supposed
you
to
very
be,
much.
a Vestal virgin, working the temple there. And so she cursed her, giving her a head of snakes and eyes, anyone that gazed upon her. She used to be incredibly,
gorgeous.
She used to be just one of the most beautiful people on the planet. And anyone that gazed upon her would be turned to stone. So that point, the algol point, is the twinkling eye of Medusa. But it's linked with, our relationship with...
It is, and if I may say, because I'm glad you described this so well, is that her head was cut off by Perseus, which I think you were going to say.
Yeah.
And and then later the head was used, I think, on Athena's armor or that to use for. It was used as a.
It was used in a positive way.
But the fact is that in the mythology it was cut off does mean that there was a definite ending. And there's violence involved.
Yeah.
And we can look at that at so many levels, which we know it can be the true violence, or it can be something that just radically changes this from that.
And just to summarize, what is it conjunct again? In
the moon.
It's the
of
moon.
this
It's
eclipse.
26 degrees. It's exactly 2610 degrees Taurus. So it is like a degree within.
It's the dynamic of losing one's head.
Oh, we only have a few minutes. Go ahead.
Literally and figuratively, and that can be, a lot of times it's related to alcohol. Alcoholology is the study of pain, and pain management. And it's like wrestling with our demons, so to speak.
We have 3 minutes,
Right.
and thank
and the
you.
transformational chart that this is.
Exactly. So I think it is good because there is this potentiality, just to close with that if you see the worst there is this transformational possibility. We can't get away from that. It is a matter of light, because it says as everything has two sides, there's a higher spiritual rays, and that people that have reached that development, it is a matter of, it's truly wanting us to, it's getting closer. Time is to change. Time is to see our light and go. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have Sarah Stromley with me from Redmond here in Seattle area, and Justin Crockett Elzie, who is on Facebook too, and in the Seattle and Peninsula area. And we've been talking about this radical time with Santa. Next week will be the Cosmic Collaboration. So, no, next week is Moonbeam. Oh, no, Planet Buzz. Check out and do subscribe. Thank you so much, because online you can find all of this.
Can I just add one little brief?
I'd love it.
Okay, so a great outlet for this, there's another asteroid that's conjunct another heavily weighted planet in this chart of the eclipse, which is Mercury and Vulcan. They're kind of similar in their mental nature, and I wanted to bring that up. Persican. I don't know. There's an asteroid that's the muse of dance, chorus, and lyrical poetry that's conjunct both of those. So a great disruptor to us self-destructing is to listen to music or have some creative outlet for this. Allow sound therapy to move through us.
You know, that sounds so much like the trickster Mercury. Mercury would love that. And that is the North Node. Yay! Here we go. We're closing out. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Sara. Sorry, Liz. We'll catch with you next time. And we love you, audience. Happy Samhain.
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 Happy Samhain.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.